These are books that I've started reading years ago, read last year. They're maybe a little less conventional, some of them, and some of them are woo woo because listen, it works. Hello, I have an exciting episode today for you. I was feeling like mixing it up a little bit, to be honest, because I feel like a lot of times I just talk about myself and what I'm going through, which, I think enough people have identified with, but also I like to kind of provide some recommendations and stuff that you can do if you're feeling like you're in a similar place or you just, are entering 2026 and you want some great reading material. But before I get into that, I have an exciting update. The head of the table has its own mugs. I'm so excited. And while this isn't like merch freely available, let me know if you do want merch. I have a lot of these, but mainly just wanted to get them because I drink a lot of coffee. And I figured if I'm going to really dive into this whole podcast thing, we might as well like have official mugs. Like in the year 2026, it's so easy to get mugs. And this is something that, as I go along this journey, I can give this out to guests that come on the podcast. I can drink my coffee or water in this. And it's just kind of a fun thing to do. So comment below if you're interested. Maybe if enough people are interested, I could do like a little free giveaway. That would be really fun. But on to today's podcast episode. If you're not aware, you're listening to the Head of the Table podcast. It is a inclusive leadership podcast. I am a former policy advisor, former chief of staff in corporate America, and your advisor on all things leadership. And that includes book recommendations. And do I have some fantastic recommendations for you today? I'm so excited. These are books that I've started reading years ago, read last year, and anything and everything in between, because I wanted to give you a top list of books that you can dive into that'll help you become a better leader and overall just become the person you want to be in 2026. I don't know about you, but 2026 just feels like my year. I think I'm just going to claim it as my year. 2025 was a wild ride. If you are newer to this podcast, you will know that I started out 2025 with a list of like everything that I thought would be going my way. I thought I would be saving a ton of money. I was really excited to do a ton of work travel and really step into that next level of work. And turns out the next level of work looked a little bit different than I thought. I got laid off in July of 2025. I was a oh my gosh, I can't talk. A contractor for the US government, which meant that while I could be fired, they eliminated my entire office, which is a function that is needed because it's women's rights. And if you're less aware, women make up over 50% of the population, over 50% of the US. And there were a lot of organizations and individuals that benefited from that office existing. And so 2025 kind of took a turn and I started this wonderful podcast. And I'm so grateful for the community that I've built here. I know we're over 40 followers, which maybe that doesn't sound like a lot. I don't care. I'm so grateful for all 41 of you that are listening and supporting me. I could not do this without you. And I'm just so grateful that you're listening. And for those who kind of follow my social media, thank you so much. It really does make a difference. The more followers I get, the more listens, comments, likes, subscriptions that I get, that does make a difference. I am, kind of in my starving artist phase right now. I don't make any money off of this and I'm just going to keep doing it and we're just going to see what happens. So I'm really grateful if you've been following along. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm debating maybe popping on Blue Sky. Let me know if you think that would be interesting. And we also have a LinkedIn page for the Head of the Table. And we are now on Apple Podcasts. That took me a little bit to figure out, but now we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and we're on YouTube here. So let's dive into it. I am going to be recommending 4 books today, and then I will have a 5th book that I'm actively reading that you can read along with me if you're interested. So we kind of have a range. So the books that I have right here are they're practical. They're maybe a little less conventional, some of them, and some of them are woo-woo because, listen, it works. I know, like, it works. Trust me, we'll get into it. So first and foremost, I think I want to start with the book that I first read, Atomic Habits. This is the first book that I ever read when I started delving into kind of self-help, growth, professional development. This was back in 2020. I had a little time on my hands. There's this thing called the global pandemic. COVID-19 was rampant, and I was stuck in my room in DuPont Circle in DC. It was a former dining room that was converted into a bedroom. I lived with 2 other lovely girls, absolutely a wild ride with them. And I just needed things to like fill my time. Like I was going a little stir crazy. And frankly, like I had just changed jobs. I, started making a little bit more money than I had before. And so I just like needed stuff to do. So I was like, I'm going to buy myself some books. We're going to dive in. We're going to be in our cozy era because I'm literally trapped in my house. So I started out with Atomic Habits, and Atomic Habits is like super, super helpful if you feel super disorganized. You feel like you're kind of in one point and where you want to be is a way over here, completely different spot, and you just like don't know how to form habits. It really, really helped me because typically whenever we talk about habits, it's like, okay, I want to like go to the gym 5 times a week. Okay. And then you go like once and then you just like never go again. Or you go and then you stop and then you go and then you stop. Well, Atomic Habits is really good about thinking about like who you want to be as a person and then building your habits based off of that and using great tricks to kind of like help you build the habits. So like, for example, if you want to be someone who goes to the gym constantly, it has a really good way of like helping you figure out like, why do you want to go to the gym? It's like, okay, well, maybe I want to like lose weight. Maybe I want to be healthier. Maybe I want to gain muscle. And it's like, okay, well, the type of person who would go to the gym is this. What habits like do they have? So it's less so about like, okay, I'm going to like do XYZ, like this laundry list of habits. It's more like, I want to be the type of person that's really strong because I have like a hiking trip coming up and I really want to be prepared for that. And so the type of person who's prepared for a hiking trip walks so many miles per day, eats like so much protein or fiber, has these habits. And that just really helped me because I was always the person that did the laundry list of habits and then I would just like drop them like that because I would get bored. And there's also one other really good element that I like for this book. They talk about habit stacking in this book, which I had never heard before. Maybe that's just me. But it's kind of stacking things you have to do together. Like, so for example, maybe you have to commute to the office every day, but you're looking to get more steps in. Okay, well, like maybe you can choose to like take public transportation and then you're walking part of the time. Or maybe you're like live close enough that you can walk to work. There are ways that you can kind of stack your habits. So if 2026 is like the year that you're like, I want to figure out how to like shift my brain so that I can build good habits, become the person I've always wanted to be, Atomic Habits is like the book to start with because I just feel like it's really helpful and it just approaches things in a super different way than just like, go do it because you're lazy. Like that's not productive to me. So that's book number one. Highly recommend. It's a great read. I think it's like everywhere. It's on Kindle. I bought this in 2020 before I had like a Kindle, before I had Audible. But your local library probably also has it. Like a majority of these books, if not all of them, your local library should have. Audible should have. Kindle should have. And check out Libby, because that is an app that allows you to get books to your Kindle from your local library. And a lot of times you can like request transfers and stuff. So highly recommend that. Now, if you're like, okay, Nora, this year I want to shift my priorities. I want to shift some things around. What do I do? The Subtle Art of Not Getting Being an F. This was so helpful for me. I previously was a people pleaser. I'm in recovery. I think I've largely recovered. Jumping on like social media and being someone that really like requires likes and subscriptions has been for their business has been an interesting journey. As like a former people pleaser, I'm learning. Let me know, like comment below if you want to hear like a whole episode about that, of how I'm like figuring out how to get over people pleasing at the same time that like I now do social media and podcasting and like consulting and like life coaching and like all of this stuff that requires constant feedback as like an episode of the podcast. I'd happily do that. But this book is really helpful. It kind of breaks down how you only have one life. Yes, I just said YOLO. I'm a millennial, guys. You gotta roll with these punches. But this talks about how you really only have like so many things you can do in a day, in a lifetime. And if you're constantly thinking about what you think you should be doing, what other people are telling you should be doing, you're going to end up a life that's not yours. And if the people you're getting advice from are offering advice that aligns with the life you want, absolutely go for it. But this book does a really good job of kind of helping you step out of that people-pleasing tendency and just like look at your life and say like, what are the things that actually align with like what I want and who I want to be versus what you don't want to be, or like doing the quote unquote like right thing. Because I do think a lot of times in our society, we're so focused on like doing the right stuff. Like for example, getting good grades, going to a good college. You know, a lot of people have taken on a lot of debt, getting in a job, and then they like think they can pay off the debt. But like we've structured our society in a way where that doesn't always end up being the case. And so I really encourage you, whether you're like young or you're kind of at like a crossroads in your life, to read this book. It will really help you figure out what you want and kind of find ways to cope with the pressures that you might be feeling from other people, from outside of you, of who they think you should be, what you should do. And I just really, really liked the approach of this book, because it's not a like, that's okay, you'll figure it out, or like here are the exact steps. It kind of helps you like get out of your head. So highly recommend The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, because it gets you out of your head. You're going to start thinking critically about what you want in your life and how to go get it and the changes that you might need to make. And guys, it's not that long. It's like a very short book. And it's really funny. There's a lot of jokes. Mark Manson talks a lot about like his journey of like mistakes he's made and how he is, you know, how he's navigated this. And I really, really appreciate that, because there's nothing worse than like taking advice from someone who's like, trust me, I've never had anything bad ever happen to me in my life and everything's gone perfect, so you must like do what I say. I'm like, no, my life is a constant disaster, like in a good way. It's like it's controlled chaos, fun, creative chaos, fun chaos, something like that. But this is really a good book if you just want to kind of mix up your life, and particularly if you are not happy about things in your life, read some of these books, make some changes, because when we are unhappy, that's a signal to our brain that there's something wrong in our life. There's something that doesn't serve us anymore, that doesn't suit us. Now, I know that there are a lot of complicated things that can happen with the brain. I'm not saying if you are facing mental health challenges that you need to completely uproot your life. The next book that I really want to talk about is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I had to look at this because every time I want to say like Jen Sincero, like I don't know where I'm getting these extra syllables. I don't know where I'm getting these extra letters. It's Jen Sincero. This is such a fun book. I read it last year and actually discovered I read it on Audible. I listened to it on Audible. And then I discovered I bought this book and I just never read it. It was like in my basement as I was trying to be like, what hard copies do I have of books? Because you can't really like, I record on my phone. I can't be like, here's my Audible. But yeah, that was really funny. So highly, highly recommend this. It's really encouraging. In 2025, when I was just going through it, where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I've never been laid off before. I've never started a business before. Like there were just so many new things and I felt so overwhelmed. Jen Sincero does a fantastic job of going through kind of her journey of how she kind of had some twists and turns in her life. And when she was starting out her coaching business in particular, she kind of had to find some ways to light a fire under her bum because she really was just like facing a lot of challenges. She didn't feel confident in herself. And so she basically did all the woo-woo things. She's like, I'm going to go to all these retreats. I'm going to try all this different stuff. Like she literally put like a whole life coaching like series that she was going to on like a credit card and was like, I'll figure it out. And I'm not saying to go into massive amounts of debt. I would never recommend that. I do think that there are times in your life where you have to jump. You have to take the risk. You have to leap into something that maybe you didn't expect, maybe that feels very terrifying, but there's a reason you're being called to do so. And so I think Jen Sincero's book is fantastic if you're kind of in that like, do I go for it phase, you've gone for it phase, or the, oh God, I went for it and what am I doing phase. That's particularly when I found her book and, well, found it again, hilariously. It's really funny the things that like you purchase, you like your previous self, you in the past, Nora in the past was like, I think we're going to need this book. And then I literally forgot that I owned it. And I have an Audible subscription. It's fine. We didn't spend extra money. And if I did technically give Jen Sincero more money, she deserves it. Great for her. Love that. But this book is really, really good because it doesn't just look at her journey and like all of the chaos and like fails and successes that she's gone through. But I really like that at the end of some of the chapters, particularly in the like, she has 4 parts to this book. I need to like remember them because I can't off the top of my head. Too much up here going on. But it's how you got this way, how to embrace your inner badass, how to tap into the mother load, how to get over your BS already, and how to kick some ass. And particularly as she's like going through some of the like latter halves of the book, I really resonated with her examples of people that either she had like worked with or she came across who like shared their story, how they like struggled and then they found their path. And that was just really encouraging to me. And I think encouraging to my subconscious brain to be like, other people have grown businesses. Other people are very successful. You can do this. There is a reason that you are feeling called to do this. So I highly recommend this if you need some encouragement. I want to read her second book called You're a Badass at Making Money, because that kind of talks more about the financial side of things, which I think that's where I'm really growing right now. But I really recommend this book if you are going through it and could use some encouragement and could also use some laughs. Like, she is absolutely hilarious. I was cracking up constantly. I would be like doing dishes or like writing something or doing other stuff and just like cracking up listening to her audiobook. So highly recommend this. It's very uplifting. Now, speaking of the woo woo, this is where we get into it, which personally, I think we all need some woo woo. And if you're not familiar with this term, it's kind of like magic, mystical, maybe a little bit more out there. Maybe we're not talking quite as much of like practical things to do. It is The Vortex by Esther and Jerry Hicks. I know that it's a little bit more out there where you're like, the vortex, okay. Like, basically the concept of this book is that the vortex is when you are in alignment with the things you wish to manifest. Now, I'm just going to start this off by saying I went through a journey with manifestation, and it was so funny. I feel like I went through the same journey with yoga. I was in college whenever I finally decided to do yoga. I like had it recommended to me, just like from a stress management perspective, a health perspective. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. And I went to one class. And you know that feeling when you're like, oh no, everyone else is definitely right. It's kind of like the feeling you get whenever you were like dating someone for a while and you would talk to your like girlfriends or guy friends and you would just be like, it's not a big deal that like they just never called me for like 3 days straight. Like, I'm sure they were just busy. And then it like you find out that they were like cheating on you the entire time, or you find out that like they were actually just like a terrible human being. And you're like, oh, I had no business dating you. That's kind of my experience with yoga. And that's also my experience with manifestation. But not that they're terrible, more so that everybody was definitely right about it. This book changed a lot about how I view the world, how I view myself, and particularly how I get through like challenging times. So I read this book in 2020 when I had moved, so I only had one roommate at the time, but it was still COVID. I was still trapped indoors a lot. And it really helps because it is a book that looks at the concept of how manifestation works. And it does actually get into some physics. It gets into some neuroscience. Like, it is actually quite like well researched, I think. But this is like just really, the vortex is really, really helpful if you are at a place where you're like, all right, man, I've tried everything. I've tried it all. Things are not working. I mean, even if things are working, I think you should read this. But like for me, it was so, I needed to be in a place where I was like, I have tried applying to like a million jobs. I've tried to advocate for a promotion for myself. Like, I've tried to advocate for all these things. Like, I was really unhappy, and I was actually like strongly considering leaving the DC area because I just thought like my journey was done. And I read this book and I really delved into manifestation. I delved into EFT, emotional freedom technique, and I completely changed my life. Like, absolute 180. Like, from the time that I read this book to now, I like 3x'd my income, like probably like 10x'd my net worth, if not like more than that. I met the love of my life whenever I had like really wanted to meet someone and be in a relationship. I manifested my dream apartment where I like manifested not only the funds to like get another job to then move into like my 1-bedroom apartment that I like really wanted for a long time. I always wanted to live alone before I got into a relationship and lived with someone. That was just like a goal I had. And so I was able to do that. I like traveled all over the world. Like, I literally was a policy advisor for the Secretary of State. That's so cool. That was like my dream. And this helped me get there. This helped me, and it wasn't just a like, okay, so I read this book and then I did what it said and then everything worked out perfectly. No, it was like this opportunity to look at things that really weren't serving me. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of stress. I did not feel very confident. I had a huge worthiness wound where I didn't really feel worthy of a lot of opportunities. I wasn't letting myself shine brightly and being like the full person that I really am. And people needed that. People needed that, but I also needed to show up for myself in that way. And so this book talks a lot about how you can be in a place of alignment, meaning like you can sit down and think about the things that you want in your life, but you don't feel so beholden to them happening. You feel much more relaxed. You feel much more at peace. And it also, I feel like, helps you get back into this place almost like you're a kid. And I think there's something quite beautiful about that. When you're a kid, you know, you go to school and you think like the world is your oyster. You can do anything and everything. You can be anything and everything. And over time, we live our lives and we're told by people probably who want to protect us, like, well, you know, you're kind of Nora, you're only 5'1", like you probably can't like be, you know, a ballerina, you probably can't be a supermodel, you probably can't be a firefighter, you probably like there's all these things. It's like, Nora, you probably can't do this. And it's like, I think people want to protect us, but I do think a lot of the answers that we seek we find when we go back to our younger selves, when we embrace that like the world is wide open and there's so many opportunities, and you release the hard things that have happened, the things that kind of the baggage you hold on to. And so this is a book that, like, listen, you can read it, you can hate it, you can read it and love it, you can read it and not finish it. I just really think everyone should give this book a shot, because I think when you're open to things, you are in a better place and you never know what can come into your life. And this book really helped me open up to the world around me. And sure, maybe some people are like, well, there's not real magic. Listen, I would much rather live in a world where I believe that there is some magic in it than a world without magic, because that's more fun. And I also just think that we're better people whenever we believe that everything can be a little bit more magical. So if you're looking for some magic in your life, if you're looking to embrace the woo-woo, if you have tried it all and you feel like you're just not getting what you want, I encourage embracing some things that feel out there to you, because maybe that one out there thing is the key to you accomplishing all of your dreams. These other books that I recommended, Atomic Habits, you know, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, You Are a Badass, they all talk about this journey. They all talk about how they hit a point where they had tried, you know, the very conventional stuff and it wasn't working for them. And so they're like, I'm going to try this stuff. And it's great to read their books. I think it's a great way to like dip your toe in the water and be like, it's a little warm. It's not bad. I really encourage that. But at the end of the day, the reason that I think that they're so successful is because they pick up a book like The Vortex and they say, I'll go for it. Sure. Now, last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about the book that I'm reading right now. You can read along with me. I would love for that to happen. This is called You Have the Magic by Haley Hoffman Smith. For context, Haley Hoffman Smith is my life coach. I discovered her in 2021. Absolutely love her. She has helped me so much. You can totally go check her out. No pressure. But I really love this book. It is a book that, at least so far as I've been reading it, is talking about kind of what I mentioned earlier, kind of coming back to yourself, of recognizing that you have so much agency, recognizing that you have so much power and magic within you that you can shift your reality. And I think there's something so beautiful about like all of these books, but particularly Haley's book, where she reminds you that like you can just be that little kid again, that you can be, I mean, for example, when I was like 8, I really wanted to be a ballerina, and I ended up veering away from it for a couple of reasons. I do think that like being told like, oh, you're probably never going to be a professional ballerina was one of those reasons. And I don't think that means that like I should have been a ballerina in this lifetime. But I do think it means that the parts of me that loved ballet, that loved performance, that loved connecting with people, that loved helping people feel emotions, helping people discover new parts of them. Like there's so much beauty in performing in ballet and in dance that I have found new ways to connect with that through like my podcast, for example. And I love so far what I've read from this book because it really just reminds me that like we're kind of all just 8-year-olds wandering around this earth. Whenever you start to see that everyone is just a little 8-year-old wandering around this earth, it really shifts your perspective about the world, but it also shifts your perspective about yourself. And it helps you like just embrace the magic that you have. We had a little barking interruption. There was a mailman, and my dog is cliche, so he barks at the mailman. But this book just kind of helps you go back to being a little kid again. And so if you want to read it with me, please go check it out. It's on Kindle. I have a hard copy. I think it's on Audible. Haley, if you're listening to this, drop in the comments where people could get this. But also comment below, if you have read this, if you are reading this, let me know. I would absolutely love to do like a book club. So let me know if people are interested in reading books. It doesn't have to be just this. Like I will reread any of these books. And thank you so much for listening today. I hope that this inspired you to check out some of these books or just create your own list of books that you really want to read in 2026, because I'm just claiming it for us now. 2026 is going to be the year that we're all thriving. We might not start that way if you're in the US. I know that there's a lot going on, but I've decided that I want a better world. And so, you know what? I'm going to create my vortex. I'm going to sit in my vortex. And I think the world is going to become a better place by the end of 2026. So let's see if I'm right. Let's see if I'm a little witchy, if I'm a little woo-woo. Maybe I have some magic of my own. Bye.